Hey, and welcome to Trail Trials, the video review section of iRunfar.com. My name is Travis Liles, and in this video we're going to take a look at the Altra Olympus 2.0. The Olympus 2.0 is actually the third iteration of this specific model. It weighs in at just around 11 ounces in a men's size 9. It has a 0 heel-to-toe drop. It has a 36 millimeter foam midsole, which puts it in, of course, the maximalist category. And the biggest update that I think anybody that is a previous Olympus user was looking for is it's added the Vibra Mega Grip outsole. So with that brief introduction, let's get up close and personal and see what these shoes are all about. So we'll go ahead and start at the upper and then work our way down, which is reverse of what I usually do, but because the outsole is kind of the main attraction on this update, we'll finish up there. So what you'll notice here is a little bit of a departure from what we've seen in the past with the Altra Olympus. So way less overlays, which is pretty consistent with what you're seeing with their new design. So this is very similar to what the Lone Peak 2.5s has. Lots of mesh, really breathable. It's a lightweight upper, and you'll see that pretty much throughout. So a very consistent upper with a little bit of this kind of laminated seams on here. So this isn't sewn on, but again glued with the logo here, and a little bit of a stripe. You'll see that reflected here on both sides. And then, of course, throughout the back as well. And then even more of that lamination that is sewed for reinforcement here around the laces as well. So when you look at this, you'll notice it is a little bit kind of narrow, right? It's not a wide path here that your laces go on. So, you know, if you've got really narrow feet, this could be a little bit hard to cinch down, but I think I have fairly average feet when it comes to that and did not have a problem. You will notice that I laced up through here with the lace lock to really cinch the heel down a little bit better, but I've got a narrow heel, so that's something I kind of struggle with all shoes. So again, kind of mesh all throughout. Really not a whole lot to say here, right, in terms of what this is. It's very simple. It's lightweight. I really felt like it's stable and does a nice job of kind of keeping my foot where it needs to be while still allowing enough room here, of course, in the toe box, which is something that Altra really touts a lot, is this foot-shaped toe box. So you'll notice it's very wide. It sort of curves towards your big toe and does the shape of your foot. Feet splay out really well, but I don't feel like I'm swimming in here. I feel like everything kind of locks down. This little bit of material here, I think, gives a good little bit of structure that's not mesh, so you're not just kind of blowing out towards the side, and you get that on both sides. From a toe bumper standpoint, you have the apex, of course, of the outsole that wraps around that you see on a bunch of shoes, and then some full leather or suede-like material here that's a little bit hardened, perhaps even some, you know, rubberized vinyl or something like that that's under here that's going to add a little bit more structure to the toe. Now, this is not a very massive toe bumper. You'll see where the majority of it is here, which is really sturdy, and then on the sides, not so much. It's really more of a structural thing. So I'd say the positive thing is because this is a maximalist shoe, your foot's a little higher off the ground to begin with, so maybe you're not going to toe quite as easily maybe as you would in something a little lower profile. But overall, I didn't have any problems hitting things or noticing, right, that this was a weak point of the shoe. As we sort of make our way to the midsole, what I'm going to do is kind of call out a couple of things here. These existed on the previous version of the shoe, and it's this little bit of a stability cage. So you can see my hand in here kind of moving that back and forth, and that also exists over here. So there's this, I don't know, section of the shoe that you sort of sit down inside. So here on the medial side, my finger's probably about right here. And this adds to, I think, some of the stability and some of the good fit here that I feel like for a maximalist shoe keeps it so that your foot's not all over the place and kind of falling off of the top of these. Adds a little extra weight, you know, aesthetically maybe not a beautiful thing, but I really feel like it was, again, a good fit, and I think this kind of area in here really adds to that, really lets your foot sort of sit down inside of the midsole versus feeling like you're running on top of it. Actually, I guess I'll call out one last thing, and that's the Gator Trap. So you see this on all of Altra shoes. So if you wear Gators, you got a little Velcro piece built in already. As we move our way down towards the midsole, you'll see that it's kind of sandwiched. So you've got this black plastic here that's a little bit higher. So again, if you pull out the insole, you kind of sit down inside of this a little bit, not very far, but inside of this black rubber portion. And then you have a slightly softer foam here in the gray that's on the bottom. There's no stability in here. There's not any posting. There's not anything that's doing any sort of correction. I will say that when you put your foot in here, though, versus tilting inward, it has a slight tilt outward. So it's not 100% flat. It has a little bit of a tilt, which for me, as someone that generally has to have either a shoe that is slightly stability, or in the terms of Ultra, a lot of times I'll use their stability wedge in my shoe. I didn't have to do that with these. So maybe a little more broad audience here for those of us that are not 100% neutral. Help you out later in a race when form and all those sort of things fall down. But you have a softer foam here on the bottom. I think with any maximalist shoe, the positive side here, of course, is more cushion. And when you're on the trail, things sort of go into this. So if I step on something sharp versus deflecting out, it sort of absorbs into the midsole, which I think maybe adds to that idea of it doesn't feel quite as wobbly. So if this was a real stiff type of foam, I feel like there could be some downsides there in terms of, you know, making you rock farther inward or outward, sprain an ankle, fall down, whatever it is. But because you kind of deflect inward, it does a nice job of keeping things really put together. I will say, though, that far more responsive than I anticipated. And I probably think that a lot throughout this entire shoe, is that it kept exceeding what I expected. So I did even speed workouts in these just to do it, and really felt like, even though this is a more softer type of foam that perhaps in past you may feel like is going to be slow you down or kind of feel like it's dragging, I felt like there was a lot of good return in these, and was super pleased with the type of output that I was able to get from these without feeling like I had some big marshmallow running on my foot. And then lastly, I think what we'll do is switch over and talk about this outsole. So if you are someone that has wore the Olympus in the past, you know that major downfall was the outsole. So in version 1, very simple kind of bladey type of outsole. They increased the lug depth and kept the same tread pattern in the 1.5. And then in the 2.0, they've completely revamped it, and I would say definitely for the better. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on here. So they use the Vibra Mega Grip, which you'll see called out right here in this little section of the shoe, and that is used all the way around the shoe. So on the red parts, these gray parts here, and this section as well that sits right underneath the ball of your foot. Now what's not actual outsole is all this other kind of gray section, and this, except for the heel portion here, this whole middle section is just soft foam. So it's effectively the midsole foam. So while you're getting some weight savings there, you're of course losing a little bit of that tread. This is going to be more likely to get worn down. Things can get stuck in there. Now again, you're on a maximalist platform, so you know something poking through and getting into your foot is probably not super probable to happen, but you do have a little bit of exposure here. You are going to experience more wear and tear, but this isn't anything that you don't see on other shoe manufacturers either, right? For weight saving purposes, they don't do the whole thing with their with the Vibra Mega Grip. So to the kind of tread pattern here, I think a very, classic tread pattern of forward and reverse lugs, and that transition happens right there at the middle of your foot. So you can see where these start to turn backwards, and then for descending, and these are forward. So you get through here, all of these really, I felt like bit and did a really awesome job without being overly aggressive. So this is one of the better, I think, hyper luggy outsoles that I've ran with. So I was super impressed with these. They did a nice job in wet stuff, on rocks, on roots, on muddy trails. These things I felt like did a really, in snow, slush, You know, without, of course, being the extreme examples of ice and things like that where really no shoe is going to help you out. In terms of a shoe that I didn't have to put a traction device on, I felt like they really knocked it out of the park with this outsole here. Really, really impressed with it, especially for the lug depth. Not being super deep, but definitely all around they did an awesome job with these. So Mega Grip is sticky. It's supposed to work well across all types of all types of different surfaces. And then again, this lug pattern here of these like teeth up front really dig in and really do an awesome job. So super excited about that. So with that, let's give final impressions. In closing, I think the Olympus 2.0 is a really good example of how Altra as a company has grown. You see higher quality materials, you see less blowouts, you see the feedback that they've listened to from their team that they sponsor, as well as their very vocal and supportive runners that use their brand. Gone are some of the more kind of wonky things I think that I'd seen before in terms of fit and finish. The tongue's long enough, it holds down on the foot really well. It's not a sloppy upper. This heel isn't like puffy and overblown. I think they did this just about right, and it's probably one of the most approachable shoes that I think Altra has put out to date in terms of mass market appeal, or just about anybody should be able to wear these. The big thing here, of course, is the outsole with the Vibra Mega Grip. And as I talked about in the review, I really am pleased with these. They worked on a variety of surfaces: mud, road, track, lots of rain, and rocks and roots and all that kind of stuff, right? That you could really put a shoe like this through. And this grip with a Maximalist, I would have been very skeptical about its ability to be stable and something that you could get on some technical terrain on. And this shoe definitely made me a believer of making it possible to have a Maximalist shoe that really has a good fit, and that you can power through and not worry about stability and kind of feeling wobbly and all over the place. So hopefully we see more of the Vibra Mega Grip throughout the Altra line. And if not, at least mimicking this tread pattern, because I think this has got the best grip of any shoe that they've put out to date. So with that, please leave your comments or questions below this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.